Hey folks, this is Abel James, and thanks so much for joining us on Fat Burning Man, where we help you look, feel, and perform at your best. Did you know that on average, American women try 61 different diets over the course of their lives? 61 diets. In the 1950s, around 10% of Americans were overweight. Taking current trends, though, into account, it's predicted that by the year 2030, 85% of Americans will be overweight. That is shocking and completely avoidable. Imagine that. From 1 out of 10 people being overweight to 9 out of 10 people almost. Just a few years from now. It's not progress, I can tell you that much. But anyway, to help us sort it all out, we're here today with Eliza Kingsford. Eliza is a licensed psychotherapist and also the author of Brain-Powered Weight Loss. Before we get there, though, here's a review that just came in on iTunes from Alden, who says, read your book and started listening to the show a few months ago. Today, I'm down 47 pounds with another 22 to get back to my high school weight. I feel great and look forward to each show. Wow, man. Well, Alden, thank you so much for putting what you've heard on this show and read in the Wild Diet into action. And thanks for sending me a note. I appreciate it. Now, to put that 47 pounds into context, I, as a musician, I have a bunch of amplifiers. And one of my tube amplifiers that I don't take anywhere weighs about 50 pounds. And that's the reason that I don't really take it anywhere. So I can't imagine how good that feels to have that off your body. So if you ever have any struggles, though, don't forget, just like drop me a line and we'll do our best to help you out. And if you're listening and you have questions or you'd like to get in touch, then of course you can always go to fatburningman.com and email me. Just sign up for the newsletter and respond to the email that I'll send to you. And you can also join in. I'm doing this a lot more recently, doing live streams. So be sure to follow me on various social media outlets, but even better, go to fatburningman.com and abeljames.com. Direct to the source. I put all my stuff there. You don't get the social media interference and all the advertising and interfering with your feed and that sort of thing. You'll just get me and Allison and our dog sometimes. And if you haven't checked it out yet, especially abeljames.com, you'll probably want to, because I've been over the past, 6 months and change, secretly recording over 400 360-degree and virtual reality videos, some of them adventures to wacky places like Dinosaur National Monument, or the real-life Oregon Trail, the Grand Tetons, Yellowstone, and tons more. So, for example, if you want to check out our entire 5-part VR and 360 series exploring the Yellowstone supervolcano, all you have to do is go to abeljames.com and then in the search bar, just type in Yellowstone. So hopefully we'll go to enough places where if you type that into the search bar, you'll be able to find something cool. But also, if you'd like to recommend some places, especially in North America, that you'd like us to visit and do virtual tours in, then drop a line. I'm always interested to know what you guys want to see and learn about. So in the videos, for example, you'll see like a Yellowstone park ranger herding bison with baby bison, a whole herd of them in the middle of the street. He's herding them with his pickup truck. I'd never seen that before. You can check out boiling mud pots and erupting geysers. You can even see an elk mama nibbling veggies out of a geothermal hot spring. So we'll be releasing VR adventure tours of Mount Evans, the highest paved road in North America, with the mountain goats that go along with it, Serpent Mound in Ohio, the Great American Stonehenge, Mount Washington, the highest peak in the Northeast, and even the backwoods of New Hampshire, where I grew up. So once again, just go to abeljames.com, that's ABEL James.com, to catch a brand new 360 VR video every single day for the next year. And if you'd like to support this free show and all of our music videos and free virtual tours and that sort of thing, please head on over to wildsuperfoods.com to get your own health-boosting goodies. These are the supplements that Allison and I have been taking every day or almost every day for years, and we're really proud to bring them to you at this point, and we can't wait to hear how you like them. So just check out wildsuperfoods.com. We just launched, so we have a bunch of deals going. So just type that into your phone, tablet, or computer, and we'll hook you right up. All right, on to the show. In this episode with Eliza Kingsford, you're about to learn about eating disorders today versus years past, how extremes become normal when they're sensationalized, problems with eating at restaurants, why you shouldn't give up vegetables for good, and tons more. Let's go hang out with Eliza. All right, folks, today we're here with Eliza Kingsford, a licensed psychotherapist and author of Brain-Powered Weight Loss. Eliza specializes in body image, weight management, eating disorders, and food addiction. You may have seen her on Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, CNN, but today we're very happy that she's here with us. Thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Of course, it couldn't be more timely. These days, it seems like Instagram, social media is running almost everyone's lives, whether it be business owners, grandparents, kids. Almost everyone is having this relationship with technology that is affecting us in ways that we don't even understand yet. So let's just start right there. Where do we stand in the age of Instagram as healthy eating and living is concerned?
Oh man, that's a big question, right? There are so many parts of that question that I think are relevant probably to your listeners and certainly to people that I work with. But the things that stick out for me are the access to information. Some information awesome, some information maybe less awesome or less credible perhaps. Yeah. And how do you tease through that? And then also what we're seeing, right? The messages, the pictures, how that affects us both consciously and on a subconscious level. And then the third big one for me that I'm learning a lot about and studying a lot about is just the mental capacity that it takes up. And when you are focusing on one thing, you are inevitably not focusing on another. It's sort of this myth of multitasking and having the access to Instagram and other apps on technology just perpetuates this cycle that when you are focusing on something, you are inevitably taking your attention away from something else. Mm-hmm. And is that something else more beneficial to you than what Instagram or another social media app is providing you? And these are all big questions that we need to be asking ourselves when we consume social media. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, in terms of imagery, it used to be the only time I saw those trashy magazines with all of the photoshopped models on the front would be at the grocery store.
If you picked one up, right? If you went and got it. Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess to some extent, our psychology is always assaulted by messages that we don't want or aren't ours, whether it's billboards or the internet or checkout aisle magazines. But back then, it was mostly just billboards and checkout aisle magazines. Now, it's anytime you want to figure out, what to do when your dog's sick and you look it up on the internet, or anytime you're trying to catch up with your parents or your kids or your family on social media. Not only are the images that are coming to you highly manipulated, right, but at the same time, you're being advertised to and manipulated by the platforms themselves into thinking or acting or eating a certain way. And almost all of those messages say, you are not enough. You need this, right?
Absolutely. Yes. We're bombarded with them. I mean, it's an onslaught of that. Like you said, whether or not you have asked for it, even if you're just scrolling and maybe you're not necessarily paying attention to that particular picture, but it's in your feed and then in your feed again and in your feed again. And it sends a message to your subconscious brain, just like you said. And that message is, you are not enough, but if you do this thing, you will be. And you get sent that messages subliminally so many times. And then depending on your situation, you're getting it from other areas too. It is no wonder that underneath there is this pervasive feeling that unless you look X or a certain way, that you're not enough. And that's part of how it gets developed.
Which is one thing, and I don't even know if we should go there yet, but I was watching a program recently about the way that people think about cosmetics these days, and what really struck me was how nonchalant so many young and older people were about getting cosmetic surgery to live up to the norms that they saw on the internet, Instagram, social media, and all the rest of it, whether it's breast implants, butt implants, nose jobs, all of it is just like going out and getting a cup of coffee is how this was presented. And that was shocking to me.
Right. We've normalized that somehow,
Yeah.
right? This, you look different from someone else, and different then automatically equals bad for some reason. And so in order to not be different, here's the way that you can change yourself to then what? Look like everyone else. I mean, it's this weird message, again, subliminally, and it's used for marketing purposes. And I don't think necessarily it's always, I won't go there. I don't think it's always intentional.
Sure.
But the underlying message that we're being sent, and like you mentioned earlier, this has always been a part of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that the onslaught of the quickness and the amount and the quantity with which we digest it now with the internet and social media has, it's put it on the fast track. It's perpetuated this cycle so quickly, and younger ages as they're starting to use technology sooner, that it's become a real problem.
Well, and it's intermingled with our information source and reality to some degree, isn't it?
It is. And it almost has gotten to the point where, in order for someone to stop and look at an even valid product, a product that might help you in your health and wellness journey, right? Somebody feels the need to, well, before this person is going to buy what I'm trying to sell, I need to smash this image or this picture, or I promise you'll feel like this. And it has inadvertently brought people along that may not necessarily have wanted to market that way, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And then it also reinforces, if you engage with the marketing, right, it reinforces this idea that you go and chase after this silver bullet. It's not going to work. No matter what that thing is, it's pretty much not going to work long term, I feel comfortable saying, which means now I'm even worse. I have failed at trying this thing that I thought was my savior. Now I'm in even worse shape and have even less confidence and less self-reliance than I did before.
Yeah. That's this yo-yo cycle, right? Now I'm a failure. I have failed, which means that I am a person who fails. And that's that internalized belief, and the cycle continues. And yet, I'm sure you experience this. There is good science and good research out there and good resources out there to help people feel well, live well, both internally and externally. It's just with this onslaught, it's really hard to tell and really hard to tease out. Well, who do I listen to, and how do I know if this is going to work for me? And I've worked, and I've done all these things and they haven't worked in the past. Why would this thing work? It makes being healthy, in my opinion, more difficult than it really needs to be when you break down the science and you look at the things that will always be true no matter what.
I got a comment just the other day in our coaching community from a woman who has been with us for years. And she basically said that I found this new diet. I don't remember what it was, something on the internet. And it said, I've got to fast a lot more. And then when I eat carbs, I have to eat 198 grams of carbs. So what do you think about that, Abel? And I'm just like, you could probably imagine what I said, but anything that is telling you to eat 198 grams of carbs sounds absolutely absurd, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
There's no way you can know the other end of. You can give the advice as much as you want, but you have no idea what the reaction is, right?
Exactly. I mean, what is even just the science of it? What is your height and weight and gender and age and all those things that would 198 grams of carbs would impact? And when you say carbs, what does that mean? Are you there is, a whole spectrum, as you know, of carbohydrates. And are you getting this information that is useful for you particularly, and not just something, this is one of the things that's my soapbox, not just something that worked for someone. And then they say, oh, this worked for me, I'm going to sell this product to everybody, which just saturates the market and confuses people. And this woman in your coaching call probably underneath it all just really wants something to work for her, right? And is looking for that feeling of satisfaction and success and longevity and sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
And grasp at these straws. Well, this didn't work for me, so I'll try this thing. And in reality, ignoring all of the things that are underneath that are really the drivers and the things that make people successful long term, not these quick fix things that you can find all over the internet if that's what you're looking for.
Oh, or even if you're not looking for that, right? And that's what I think a lot of people are not looking for the next big thing, but it keeps finding them.
Sure.
And that seems to me is like one of the big changes. My wife and I took over a year off from social media. I'll say like 95%. We didn't have Wi-Fi internet. We didn't have Ethernet or anything like that. And it's so, you can see the changes that happen to culture and society and people's psychology to some degree when you take a step back for a bit and then you come back and take another look. And like I was saying, the things that have been normalized now are startling, even when you look back a few years ago. Like the things that people get away with now. It used to be clear, I thought, who was a scammer on the internet, right? Like who was completely full of it, who was a fake guru. These days, anyone can buy as many likes or followers as they want to. Anyone can kind of be propped up as this Instagram or internet expert. So for someone who actually does this for a living like you, how do you, I guess, continue to do your job in a professional way when Instagram butt models are wiping the floor with real experts?
That's a really good question. And actually, I've done a lot of work on that. And, just the woo-woo spiritual side of me always goes to, I need to focus on the people I'm serving, and the people who need me will find me. And my focus stays on, listen, what am I doing? What am I putting out there? How am I serving my community? And to try not to get caught up in that. But I'd be lying if it didn't take some work to get to that point, because I was telling somebody this the other day. It's this fascinating concept where when you go and apply for a job, it used to be that you would have a resume, right? You'd bring your resume and there would be where you worked and maybe some references and who you worked for. And then people would decide whether or not you were qualified for that job, and maybe you got it, maybe you didn't, right? Mm-hmm. Now you can go and be anyone and say that you're anybody that you want to be. You can say that you're an expert. You can say that you've worked with, people use these big phrases. I've worked with so many people and thousands of clients, and maybe you have, but maybe you haven't. If you're buying followers and likes, maybe you're also saying things like you've worked with thousands of clients. And then we go and spend money, right? For another fad. So while I'm not trying to dog anybody out there who is actually serving a community who really needs them, I do think that we still would be best served to do our own research, just like you wouldn't go to a doctor, who kind of showed up without any who's sort of online and just said, well, I'm a doctor. This is what I do. You would make sure they went to medical school and probably have been in practice, and maybe insurance recognizes them as a doctor. You'd want to do some of the same things. Does this person have any credentials? Do they have any background in what they do? As I mentioned earlier, one of the hardest things that I see from a psychotherapy standpoint is this, well, this worked for me, so it must work for everyone. And while that's not always untrue, maybe you did uncover the thing that works for a lot of people. That's great. Making sure that there is also sound science and sound research and sound input from other people that say, this is credible and this is coming from a credible source. That's what I see most on the internet when you were talking about all the options out there, is that anybody can say they're an expert. Anybody can say they've worked with as many people as they want to say. You don't have any real way of checking that necessarily unless you do a little bit of digging. Have they do they have any credentials? When you're talking to them, do you get to talk to them? Can you ask them, what's their philosophy? Who have they worked with? What science? Where does it come from? And if people can't answer those questions, then for me, I start wondering about not necessarily their credibility, but how much are we saturating the market with a lot of really muddy information?
Yeah.
So I say that now. I've done a lot of work on saying, you know what, my work is to make sure that my work is credible and that I talk to, the appropriate scientists and board members and people that I need to do to make sure that I'm offering the best product. And that's all I can do, right, is focus on what I'm putting out there.
But I think it's worth saying, when you're healing people, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're probably not like stuffing more information down their throats. That's not necessarily the answer, right?
No, this is one of the things is people know. It's not a lack of knowledge, right? So, for instance, a lot of my clients are struggling with body image and disordered eating and obesity. And it's not that they don't know that the body probably functions better with something like a lean protein and some good fat and a vegetable. They've heard that. This is not a lack of knowledge. This is an ability to make it a sustainable lifestyle. This is an ability to look underneath the hood and understand what their internal belief systems are and what is subconsciously driving some of their behaviors, and learning how to change patterns of behavior. I think if you ask most people, they would understand more about nutrition than we give people credit for. They don't need more information. They need to figure out what's underneath the hood and work on that, is what I find.
So what are the pillars, if you could simplify, just forget about the standard way of eating and what everyone is coming to the table with and all the baggage. But like, if there are a few pillars of how to eat and live, what would those be?
Okay. So again, taking what I know about the science and the metadata and looking at analysis studies, I believe that this movement towards nutrient-dense whole foods is my top pillar, right? And there's a necessity now to define what a nutrient-dense whole food is, only because we've screwed it up so bad over the last 40 years or 50 years, right? Only because we have introduced our food system thousands and thousands of products that have been processed and engineered and chemically altered in this unnatural way. Is there even a need to talk about what a nutrient-dense whole food is, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, it's coming back to this place of, when we're choosing food, if I'm really asking my clients to simplify things, it is looking at food in its purest forms and not necessarily demonizing whether it has this macronutrient or what type of fat. Well, I should take that back. There's definitely some types of fat that are more preferable and better digested in the body. But rather than demonizing a macronutrient, it's looking at, where did it come from? Is it in its close to its natural form as possible? Great. I'm going to start there. That's going to be my top pillar. And then underneath that, I'm looking at what is satiating, what is satisfying, what do I like, what can I stick to long term, what has enough fiber content to keep me full, what has enough protein content to keep me full, and just learning about what macronutrients do in the body rather than demonizing one over the other. So that's where I start, is nutrient dense whole foods. And then from there, we work our way down and individualize it, right?
Yeah. But that doesn't sound overly complicated. That doesn't sound impossible to me. Yet, we complicate things that don't need to be as complicated. It's about removing the interference more than anything else, right? I think it was in your book, I just read that in the 1950s, 10% of people-ish were overweight. Today, it's somewhere around 70%. By 2030, we're looking at 85%, which I hadn't seen that before. That's just mind-boggling. If we keep going on this trajectory, absolutely, we have already surpassed that. If you are at a quote normal weight, you are in the minority. 30% of people are considered in a normal weight range, and we can villainize the BMI and there's all those kinds of things. But in reality, we know this to be true.
that more people are struggling with weight and obesity now than are not struggling. And so we have to look at, how did we get here? What did we do to ourselves? And I think oftentimes we overcomplicate, specifically when we're talking about nutrition, we overcomplicate what it takes to be healthy. What we underestimated, this is, I think, big, what we underestimated was the impact that chemically engineering and altering our food would have on our brain chemistry and our body chemistry. And so you've got this double whammy of what processed food and significantly altered food does, and foods that aren't supposed to be together, like fat and carbohydrates are the two things that we put together. Naturally, they don't occur in nature together.
Right.
They occur singularly, but they don't occur together. We put them together in pizza and ice cream and those kinds of things.
And that's a big thing.
It's a big thing. It's a huge thing. We underestimated the impact of what doing that would have on our brains and on our bodies. And now we're really suffering from that. And what I see happening most is that people are getting off these processed foods and getting off the impacts that it has, especially on our brain chemistry, is really difficult. They actually do make us feel better chemically in the brain. They release the dopamine that makes us feel better, these comfort foods, right? So here we are, people are dealing with more stress than ever, more social media than ever, more, just life things than ever before, getting less natural serotonin, more unnatural levels of dopamine, thus perpetuating the cycle of the types of food that they're eating. And that's the process that is really hard to break. When you're looking at just nutritionally, what is the healthiest thing for us? It's not that complicated. It's actually pretty simple. And I think if you look at the underlying messages from a lot of quote unquote diets, they actually are saying pretty similar things. You got to eat more food that came in its natural form. Some people prefer more fat, more complex carbohydrates. Okay. But underneath, it's relatively simple. It's that the impact that our food system has had on our emotions, on our psychology, on our neurobiology, our physiology, and our ability to make good decisions has really snowballed into this major problem that has been hard to backpedal from.
Have you felt that, and this is, I guess it's kind of a personal question, but have you felt that personally as time has gone by, as the world has evolved or progressed, if we use those words, which I'd rather not, but have you felt, damaged or influenced by the world in a different way, the health world?
Yes, actually, I have. It's funny you say that, and it reminds me of a story of my much younger self in my college days. I remember just having a really traumatic experience going through the grocery store and having no idea what to buy.
Yeah.
Right? You're in college, you're not being cooked for anymore, and you're needing to make decisions. And there was so much information coming at me from so many different angles. I just remember going through the grocery store, crying, being very upset, thinking, I don't know what to buy. I don't know what is healthy for me. I don't know if I'm supposed to be looking at calories and back then, I'll date myself a little bit here, but there wasn't really a focus on macronutrients at that time. It was only don't eat any fat. Fat was the enemy, and calories. That was it. That was kind of all the information that was out there. There were some things, the zone, maybe the South Beach wasn't even out yet, but it was coming out, but it was, calories, and it was fat was bad, but there wasn't anything else. And there was all these products on the shelves, 40,000 choices to make. And it was, I don't know what is going to be healthy for me. So yes, I personally had that experience, but I also see it. And back then there's no Facebook or Instagram, or there was only, internet searches. And even then we weren't searching for the internet for food advice. At that point, it was still books. But the diet books, even at that time, had conflicting information. So yes, I have felt a diet information overload my whole life.
When did you first start feeling the need to diet, or the need to like start thinking that way, I guess?
I remember, so I was an athlete all growing up. I swam, I played soccer, I did some other things. And as an athlete, that you have that experience of practices and things like that. So naturally your body, without even consciously thinking about it, you're getting enough activity to kind of regulate, especially as an adolescent with your metabolism for the most part. But I remember eating as a kiddo, things that I may not choose now, and it didn't have an impact. I think probably because of how much I was exercising. But I do remember a turning point in high school when I had joined the dance team, which sort of went alongside the cheerleading team, and there was a lot of really stereotypical disordered eating behaviors amongst that peer group. And it sort of dawned on me when it hadn't before that there was this thing called dieting and oh, am I supposed to be looking at my body like that? And am I supposed to be going to these amounts of extremes to get my body to do this thing? And I was sort of introduced to it inadvertently through that community. So it was probably in high school where it became this connection, this automatic mental connection of your body doesn't look like what it's quote unquote supposed to. And in order to fix that, going on a restrictive diet is the answer. And from there, it was just, okay, what kind of restriction? What am I restricting? How much am I restricting? It was just sort of it went down that path. And I remember looking at certain magazines that when you think as a kid, you're doing something relatively harmless. I remember articles. I remember things that stuck out to me that said, 5 ways to melt your back fat. And I would go, I can't see my back. Is that a thing? Do I have back fat? Do I need a mirror? Should I be looking, things that you don't think about or
right.
that won't even occur to you that are sending you these messages. And I remember that so clearly, even now. So, and yes, those were in some of those magazines that you'd mentioned earlier. Maybe I picked it up and was reading it. And now that message that was in a magazine is daily and multiple times a day on some teenager's Instagram feed and Facebook feed and all over the internet. So it is damaging.
And it's even happening to kids to some degree, right? Like that's, I've thought about this recently, and it has been going on for quite some time, but I think it has gotten worse. The idea of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, He-Man, Captain Planet, all raging on steroids. Like if you look at the bodies, and it brings me back to a time in college when I studied psychology and brain science. I remember this one particular study that really stood out, which was it looked at the ideal, I think it was a silhouette of the male and female form, and it had each sex rate, what that shape was. And I'm sure you're familiar with this, but when you looked at the picture of a woman silhouette that men rated, it was far to the very curvy side. Yeah. If you looked at what the women even back then in college thought, it was rail thin, so thin that I remember being a guy in college being turned off, like actively turned off by the silhouette that they chose. So what does that do to your mind? What does that do to the interaction between men and women or people in general?
I'm going to make a generalized statement here without the research study in my hand to back it up.
Sure. Yeah, it's been a while.
But what I hear and what I see mostly between peers is that it's not, how to say this, it's more women competing with women, competing with themselves, if that makes sense. So I think if you were to ask a number of men, that study would be true, that they prefer perhaps a curvier body than what is shown in magazines and on runways and such like that. And we have to remember that those magazines are showing women that to women to sell women their clothes and products, right?
Right.
And so it's not necessarily about what a man prefers. It's this strange, I think, if you really stop and think about it, it's this strange philosophy that pits women against themselves and one another, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah. And I'm not saying that women should look good for men at all. What I'm saying is that, like, that's what's happening between, like, over there without men being ever involved.
I agree with you. Yes, I think that is. It's what's happening over there. Now, that's not to say that there hasn't been any, in the advertising, they will oftentimes use a man looking seductively at a woman to then again send the message that this is what you should look like for a man. But that is not to say that is your everyday male's doing, or I'm trying to tread lightly here, because we're not really talking about what the ideal body should look like that's part of the problem. Mm-hmm. But I think what you're trying to say is it's the messaging that's the problem, not the actual men behind it, because I think there are men who would really prefer a wide array of bodies, everything from thin to very, very curvy. I mean, and everything in between. So it's the messaging and the marketing that's the problem, and not necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. If you look back to our psychology, well, and you have to consider as well that even men have been brainwashed into thinking that women should be thinner than they naturally would be, right? So even that is skewed.
Right.
But it's if we went back to biology and we took out all of that messaging, we would be in a vastly different place, and it seems like we would be much more whole.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, if you're just looking at attraction from a biological level, the biology of the continuation of the species requires women to have enough fat on their body in order to reproduce and have a healthy child, and the right is not the right word, but the appropriate hip structure and bone structure to be able to birth a child and then live through that childbirth. I mean, so we have gotten so far from kind of the biological mechanisms of who we are as men and women, and into this deep rabbit hole of the shoulds and musts and what we're supposed to look like. And that's one of the things I love working on most, is finding this internal voice, right? And finding the ability to change these. I mean, we've just spent the last, however long we've been talking about these beliefs that have been ingrained in us from all of these different aspects and all of these different places where we get our information for so long. If we're not paying attention and we're not actively trying to do something different, it's no wonder that the vast majority of people feel like they're not good enough. And I think it was something like 70% of girls age 5 and older, feel like they should be on a diet. So it was something like that. I probably butchered it. It was so overwhelming. I have a 5-year-old, right? So I'm going, my bells and whistles are going off. But I look at my 5-year-old and I'm going, where, why, where are these messages coming from? And I know cognitively where they're coming from. We do a lot of things in our household to make sure we're really aware of body messages. But 5-year-olds, right, should not be burdened with this body size and shape. And this is where those internalized beliefs really, really start.
And start early, much earlier than we realized. That's what I realized. I found what I was doing actually was digitizing a bunch of old performance tapes, because I've been performing since I was a little kid. And one of the tapes had been recorded over with MTV. And a bit of cartoons, I think, was also on it. And I started watching them as an adult, and I'm like, that is where that came from. When I see the picture of just like, this is why I wanted huge muscles that almost all women think are grotesque, in the same way that men think that, the skinniest woman is grotesque. It's like, why are we chasing these ideals? Because they've been ingrained since we were 5 years old. So what do we do to help heal that? I guess number one is recognizing it, right?
Recognizing it is huge. And the ultimate work, the ideal outcome in my mind is to get people to start striving for the things that come from an internal set of beliefs and not an externally fed set of beliefs, right? So, if you're watching MTV and you're seeing these big raging muscles, and that's an external set of beliefs that you're going, okay, I'm supposed to be that, which quiets down that innate internal voice, which says, hey, this is more what you're naturally built for, whether it's lean body mass or more muscular body mass or whatever it is. And we start to dampen down that internal voice that says, this is where we are most aligned. This is where you are most comfortable and you will find most joy. And we stomp that down, and we get all of these externalized messages that we then take on as our own and say, okay, this is the truth. I have to be this in order to be that, right? And so we start with that. We start with first, as you said, being aware of what those messages are. So I always say that when I'm working with clients, it's never about a number on the scale. They always have a number that they're looking for. No matter who I work with, there is a number in their mind. But we try and peel back the layers of that and say, okay, it's not that number. There is nothing inherent about the number 145 that is something magical. It is literally a piece of electronic that spits out a number on it. That number means nothing. So what belief are you attaching to it? And every single time it is something about, when I get there, I will feel this. This is what I'm looking to feel. This is what I'm striving to feel. This is what I'm hoping to not feel or feel. So we first have to identify what it is we're looking for. And then we have to figure out ways of trying to get to that feeling, whether it be through behaviors that are geared towards weight loss or completely something else. We have to find ways of getting to that feeling that detach that externalized number on the scale and look for more internal ways to find that feeling. So for instance, if a person is looking to feel more confident and they're saying 145 pounds will make me feel more confident. Okay, I got it. Feel more confident is your feeling.
Yeah.
We're going to find other ways to make you feel more confident, or we're going to work on the systems and behaviors that will get you to a weight or size or shape that will make you feel more confident. Because when you work on trying to get to that feeling versus to get to that end result, that's when more sustainable, whether it's weight loss or fat loss, that's when more sustainable behaviors emerge, because now you're not looking at this arbitrary number, which really has no meaning. You're going straight to the heart of it, which is this confidence that you're lacking, right? It's a lot more steps to it, but if I'm trying to simplify it.
Well, sure. And I think what a lot of people don't realize while they're in the middle of trying to lose the weight or change the shape or what have you is that maintenance is a whole different ball game. In some ways, I think once you get the hang of it, it's easier. It takes less effort. Easier is the wrong word, but it takes less effort in some ways, but it takes a whole different way of thinking about everything, because now, like, if you do have that 145, how are you going to be happy now if you're not? Right? That's the problem that people really run into.
It is. I mean, that is one of the biggest problems, is that if you didn't focus on the feeling that you were trying to get to at 145 and you just focused on the number, that will absolutely happen, is that you'll get to this number. But if your internalized set of beliefs still reflect somebody who's 200 or who is for whom losing weight is really difficult, or I don't believe this will stick for me, if those are still your internalized set of beliefs, you will go back to those behaviors that kept you at that place that you said that you didn't want to be. That will happen. And as you said, it's losing weight, for some people can be fairly easy, actually. It's the maintenance piece that becomes difficult. Not only are your biological mechanisms working against you after you've lost weight, which most people don't think about, but your internal set of beliefs. For instance, there was a study that came out about the Biggest Loser participants, and they talked about how their biological mechanisms got them back towards being overweight. But in some of my talkings with some of those past participants, the other thing that happened was that they still believed that they were an overweight person. Their internal set of beliefs still went to this place of fear of weight gain, that they embodied the belief system of someone who struggles with weight. They were afraid that they were going to gain weight again. How am I going to keep it off? And therefore, subconsciously started to engage in the behaviors that got them back to being in line with their internal belief systems. If we do not change our underlying internal belief systems about who we are, we will always go back and act in accordance with what those are. But
you don't really want to like take on a new identity and slap it over the old one, right? So how do you do that?
Yeah. That's an interesting way to put that, new identity, and slap it over the old one. That is more like faking it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
The systematic work is about first identifying what those internal beliefs and stories are, and then not necessarily slapping a new one onto it, but for instance, if we're going back to I want to feel more confident, and 145 is going to make me do that. It's looking at other areas of your life where you can elicit that feeling as you're working on the healthy behavior. So it's sort of building up that confidence muscle, not only with perhaps the healthy behaviors you're engaging in, but maybe you're really confident in your work. Maybe you're really confident with your partner or your friendships or your child or the run you just went on, or fishing, or whatever it is. What are the other things in your life that you can cultivate to build up that confidence? So it's not just faking it till you make it. And one of the other ways we do this, and we sort of short circuit the process, is doing a lot of gratitude work. So gratitude is the easiest way to change a negative belief system, is focusing on the things that you're grateful for brings more things to be grateful for, which gives you more things to focus on. It starts to become this snowball effect. There are systematic ways of changing an internal belief, but you're right. You don't just slap a new one on an old one and say, oh, this is who I am. It takes some work.
So one of the things that Dr. Alan Christensen brought up today is that a lot of people have trouble because they're over-exercising. More people in his practice have that problem than the other one, which brings up a whole lot of different complications, but I think leads us back to, at some point, what you really need to develop or redevelop is common sense, self-reliance, independence, the confidence that you were talking about before. And a lot of that comes from really getting out of your comfort zone not in a health way, in a life way, right? Like in a way that I am free to be whatever I want to be now, instead of I'm to use an example from the TV show when I worked with Kurt, his identity largely was, I'm the big, tall, fat, funny guy. Yeah. That's who I am. Yeah. Right. And so you kind of need to rebuild that confidence to be a kid again and be like, well, who do I want to be?
Yeah. I love that question, is who do I want to be? And getting really curious of where you feel most aligned. It's one of the things I work on with people is how to tell if you are in alignment or if you are being incongruent. And so for Kurt, if he's the big, tall, fat, funny guy and, you lose 50 pounds, then who do I get to be? Or being curious about what feels most aligned. Am I still funny? Do I like to be funny? Was being funny, a way to make light of how I really felt uncomfortable in my body? Who knows what it is? But you get to be curious about what feels most aligned and most intuitive for you, and really cultivating that place of inner knowing takes some practice, and it's little incremental steps at a time, but you can really get a sense of, like I can tell very quickly these days what feels aligned, or when I get that little feeling and goes, you know what, this is not so much me. This is, I'm not serving it, or it's not serving me. I'm going to pass. That's something that you can cultivate with actionable steps over time.
Yeah. Well, man, I can't believe that we're out of time, but this has been such a powerful, powerful conversation. And we'll definitely have to have you back, because people are struggling now more than ever, it seems, yet somewhere deep down inside us, we all kind of have the answer, like you said before. So if you'd like to leave us with a thought or two, as well as where folks can find you.
I love that you said that. I believe that with my whole heart, that one of the problems we have is all of the inputs of information are really just making it harder for us to access that inner knowing that everybody has. Everybody has that inner knowing. Everybody has the ability to cultivate that and make that much stronger. And part of what we're struggling with is a society that does so many things to distract us from cultivating that piece of ourselves. So I love that you just said that. I would love to interact with your listeners. You can find me at Eliza Kingsford on any of the social handles that we just discussed, but also elizakingsford.com or empoweredwellness.com. Those are both of my companies and places to find me. And I would love to come back again. I can't believe we ran through that info. We'll do it again and get a little into some interesting places.
That sounds great. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Hey there, listener. Thanks so much for listening to the very end of this episode. As a special bonus, I'm including a new original song that I made up just for you, live on the spot, as part of my new improv music video series. I hope you like it. You can check out hundreds of these original songs and more for free at abeljames.com. Here we go. This episode is brought to you by listeners like you and Future Greens. Let me ask you this. How many servings of veggies have you had so far today? How about this week? Like it or not, recent studies show that 9 out of 10 of us do not eat the recommended amount of daily fruits and veggies. Now, if you're one of those uncompromising health nuts who gets more than 10 servings of veggies a day, you can ignore what I'm about to say. Now, for the rest of you, listen up. If you're looking to improve your health and increase the amount of nutrition in your diet with fruits and veggies without the sugar, you're going to love our new creation called Future Greens. Future Greens is packed with vitamins, minerals, and filling fiber from whole organic veggies, sprouts, algae, and berries, including kale, beet, parsley, collard greens, cauliflower sprouts, broccoli sprouts, spirulina, chlorella, blueberries, raspberries, and much more. We think it tastes great, and we even heard that some kids think that Future Greens taste pretty good too. All of our products at Wild Superfoods are lab tested for purity and potency and formulated according to the latest cutting-edge developments in research, science, and medicine. We have extremely high standards when it comes to our health, and we know you do too. Guaranteed nutrition, no matter where you are. That's our promise to you. So check out Wild Superfoods and please get in touch to tell us what you think. Just head over to wildsuperfoods.com to get the scoop on Future Greens, and you can save 20% when you select subscribe and save. All you have to do is visit wildsuperfoods.com to get the deal. Thanks for listening. Well, hey there, listener. This is Abel one more time, and I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Fat Burning Man Show. If you liked it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you might be listening to or watching this show right now. And if you have a second, please leave me a quick review for the Fat Burning Man Show. I read every single one of them, and every time you leave a review, it gives us a little boost in the rankings, and that helps other people find this show. And if you can think of someone else who might enjoy and benefit from this free show, please take a second to share it with a friend or a family member. And if they're like, what is this Fat Burning Man thing? That's a really silly name. You could be like, you're right, but here's the deal. We've recorded over 250 episodes of the Fat Burning Man Show with thought leaders in health from all over the world. And so far, we've won 4 awards, hitting number 1 in health in more than 8 countries internationally. We have more than 30 million downloads already, but we're just getting started. I can't believe any of this, by the way, and couldn't do any of this without you. So thanks once again. But here's some more good news. You can download and listen to every single episode of the Fat Burning Man Show for free with 0 outside advertisements, no outside sponsors, and no corporate overlords. All you have to do is type in fatburningman.com. We'll give you a second here just to type it in, fatburningman.com. And you'll get all the show notes, transcripts, and video and audio versions for all the past episodes of the Fat Burning Man Show for free. Better yet, enter your email at fatburningman.com, sign up for my newsletter, and I'll even send you a quick start guide so you can take your health into your own hands right now, along with a few of our ridiculously tasty recipes as a special thanks for signing up. Once again, just go to fatburningman.com right now, enter your best email to get your free goodies with a bonus surprise straight to your inbox. This is Abel James signing off. Thank you so much for listening once again, and have a great week.